Welcome to Journey Through the Eyes, the EMDR podcast that is here to unveil and explore the transformative power of EMDR therapy. Here at Journey Through the Eyes, our mission is to support clinicians that are both seasoned and new to the mental health and the EMDR field with those critical conversations and absolutely powerful resources about EMDR therapy and how to build your amazing private practice. I am one of your hosts. I'm Tamera J. Brown and the founder of Arise Psychotherapy and Coaching Services here in San Antonio, Texas. And I want to hold space for my beautiful, amazing sister friend and colleague, Miss Kathy Couch.
Yes, girl. I'm Kathy Couch here in Idaho, therapist with the last name Couch, owner of my private practice, Willow Creek Counseling, and then my training and consulting practice, Rewired 360. We're launching our podcast. We published our very first episode, which will be available to listeners every Friday at 6 a.m. So that will be the go time. So we did it. I'm so proud of us. We needed a little bit of content before we did this. So we're super thrilled and excited to build our listening community and to build our support. So we're excited.
Such a beautiful time.
Yeah.
And so I'm so excited because, Kathy, as we know, our mission in each episode is to provide insightful, very organic, very real life conversations about how to grow, how to be both moving into EMDR and becoming an EMDR therapist, as well as building our amazing private practice. And today we have a beautiful conversation about how do we begin to introduce EMDR to communities that have a little bit of skepticism about the therapy or just therapy in general. And so this is going to be a beautiful, insightful conversation, and I want to toss the mic over to you and have you get us started with this, because I just think it's going to be a powerful conversation.
Yeah.
And want to give you the mic first.
So this concept of this idea with EMDR, Tamira's down in Texas, and we had this conversation a few weeks ago where her community is more skeptical in the African American realm of these interventions, probably because of their historical trauma and some of those ideologies that still exist. The receiving of the therapy is skeptic. There's skepticism there. And I'm in rural Idaho where there's a lot of rural populations, some conservative mindsets about mental health in general. It's more of a pull yourself up by the bootstraps mentality. And how do we as providers have these conversations about how to help people change and reducing the stigma of therapy? And when you're engaged in a change therapy like EMDR, and I'm not knocking narrative therapy, I've done it. I've been a general therapist for a long time before EMDR. When you get to EMDR, this is a change therapy. And when you see the transformative power that EMDR holds, and you realize as a clinician, I had a role in changing this person's life, and you can see it. It's so powerful, and conveying that message to a population can be a challenge and those barriers. So today we're going to talk about EMDR in rural and BIPOC communities. I'll speak to the rural component. Tamera can speak to the BIPOC component, and that's not saying that each of those are mutually exclusive just because that's where we live. That's just more experience that each of us have in those areas. So that's the conversation today. And we're going to start by working on the skeptics. So as we consider skeptics, we've received this information. If EMDR is so powerful, why isn't it more predominant? So Tamera, I'll give you the mic there maybe, and you can talk about your experience with that maybe.
I mean, that it's such a powerful question, right? One of the things I've learned to do, because there's so much public opinion about this particular topic, and what I have to do as a growing trained EMDR therapist is just begin to take notice and go back to Dr. Shapiro's original intent. And what I've discovered, what I believe is that Dr. Shapiro had a dream and a vision to put this therapy into the hands of every person, right? That it was not just exclusive to any class of people. But what I've noticed in my personal journey is just that in order for us to bring this therapy to our communities and to the lives of the people that we are serving, we got to be willing as mental health therapists. And sometimes we get out of grad school and we learn different therapy models and treatment approaches and everything. One of the things that I take note of, even for myself, is that when I came out of grad school, the most popular form of therapy was cognitive behavioral therapy. I also heard about narrative therapy. You know, I came out of grad school with a fried brain. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
overloaded. And then you're trying to figure out how to put all of these different pieces together. And some therapists like myself have no idea that there are thousands of therapy models that we are now have to become self-starters
Yeah.
to go and research and venture into. And I can remember, Kathy, my grad school professor said to us, she said, you have to get clear about your personal philosophy about healing and growth. And that was key. I really couldn't make the connection to what she said there. But along the journey, a lot of my struggles in stepping into my therapeutic identity just as a therapist was difficult, let alone trying to find what therapy model resonated with me. I
No,
really, for
good.
myself, I had to overcome the big idea that, oh my gosh, I am a licensed therapist.
Yeah.
And now I get to choose what healing model resonates with my core values. And so for me, with this, one of the reasons why it's not um, as prevalent and as well known is because we need more self-starting, more aware, more awakened therapists who are doing their work to try to find out what therapy model aligns with what they are here to do as a therapist. And so we got to introduce or, expose people to these types of therapy models. It's really easy to get comfortable with the therapy models we get handed, especially in internship when you go through, Kathy, working for community health and things of that nature. It's very limited. Okay. And so that's my piece. That's my piece getting started. Just that we need to both help, support, enlighten, and encourage therapists that as they're on their journey and getting their feet wet and coming into their therapeutic identity, that they begin to identify who they are as a therapist and then begin to do the research on the therapy models that will resonate with what they want to do and who they want to be in the field.
Yeah, there's a lot of juicy nuggets there that you just pointed on. I think the last point is I think the EMDR International Association is very wise in the fact that they said you need to be a master's level independently licensed clinician before you're EMDR certified.
Mhm.
And I think that's because they recognized that this is an advanced intervention and modality and that there needed to be those foundational frameworks. And I'm going to talk about the stigma in getting there and some of the barriers here in a minute. But I wanted to touch on for you, when we're in grad school, sometimes we're just doing the work to get the degree, and that is totally okay. I've been there. I
Mhm.
started my career in child welfare, then I went to substance abuse and then community mental health. And so all of those foundational things are necessary to be able to do that. I was in mental health for 13 years before I found EMDR. And So I think that I don't want our listeners to discount themselves if that's their journey
Hmm.
or feel like they have to understand this, because from my experience, I had to have a little bit of background in understanding the different modalities. And I don't know that your teacher, when she said you have to be clear about your philosophy, she probably didn't mean it right then at that moment.
Hmm.
Because if we're wading through all of that information at that time, we don't really have a person in front of us to see what that looks like. And so
Hmm.
that probably was a future for your future as you're learning these things. And I think I had to have some experiences with other interventions that were great interventions, but I felt like in trauma interventions, I was leaving patients with the brain open. And so I'm talking about this all the time. Simon Sinek, he talks about what's your why. And I needed those things to determine for myself, what is my why?
Hmm.
And when I found out what is my why, which was I felt like clients were leaving sessions with their brains open, that basically meant that they were activated in their nervous system and out of their window of tolerance in EMDR terms. But I didn't
Hmm.
know the words,
Yes.
right? And when I found
Yes.
EMDR, I'm like, oh, this is what it was. And I wanted to go back and talk about when Dr. Shapiro founded this. She was walking in a park and she was receiving the treatment herself with her own eye movements. Isn't that powerful?
I love her story. And this is another point that we can bring up because um, women are at the heart of my private practice. And I got the rainbow color of women. You know, my heart is, very sensitive because I am of the BIPOC community. And for those who may not know the term, BIPOC is just Black, Indigenous, original people of color, right? And so, what I've learned about listening to Dr. Shapiro's story was she was very passionate about her own self care. And I think that that's another thing because for me, when I'm introducing this therapy, it has really become an honor and a privilege because EMDR is a change therapy and it's so transformative that I first of all talk about Dr. Shapiro's story and how she stumbled on it, going through a particular life storm, you know. And I've heard different stories about her getting a diagnosis in regards to her health and how she took that walk trying to just get herself together, just like how we all do whenever we're going through storms. And I kind of use that story to normalize for, women of color, normalize the fact that we all go through storms and that many of the storms can impact us, not just change circumstances, but how it can impact the way we think, how we feel, how we view ourselves, and how we view the world around us. And um, one of the beautiful things I think you said that as a therapist and as a growing therapist, really reminding ourselves that we're on a journey. We're
Yeah.
not trying to just arrive at a destination, right? But this is a real growing pathway. And when we begin to realize that we're here, right, to, in a sense, introduce a beautiful therapy model and tell people, here's a pathway that
Yeah.
even though you've gone through this storm and you've gone through this, difficult challenge, and it didn't just disrupt your life routine, but now we have language, as you said. I didn't have that language
Yeah.
as a new therapist coming into this field. I was recognizing my clients because I was serving clients with substance abuse. And I was like, something is missing because they kept They would come, and you can know clients who were really vested in wanting to get better. But they kept stumbling
Yeah,
and they kept reverting back, and then they were losing faith and losing hope, just like other people who haven't gone through therapy. And maybe they've gone through, their church, or they turn to family or whatever, and they try to use these different strategies to help them to heal and grow. And then nothing works, and then they lose hope and they lose faith. I've been able to share from Dr. Shapiro's story, normalize the fact we're all human and go through storms, but then have language to say, okay, yes, whatever storm you've gone through may have disrupted your life, but now let's look at how it changed you. And having that lens of the window of tolerance, having that lens, because again, EMDR is a holistic therapy, which I love because it doesn't just examine what's going on in the client's thoughts or in our thoughts or trying to change our behaviors. We're really
yeah,
getting to a big source of what's going on. And I get to share that with them, right? That there's more to them that meets the eye. And what I've noticed when I begin to speak to them from that point of view, it validates that, man, yeah, I'm not just a thinking being. I do have a heart. I do have a soul. And yes, this storm did kind of weigh on me and cause me to feel like I'm a failure or I'm a disappointment. And yeah, that has zapped my energy where I've lost my motivation. And man, I didn't even know my body was so incredible
yeah,
and my nervous system. And then it takes the burden off of how they chalk it up as weakness or their character or their faith. And then there's that line of separation, and they get, oh, you know? And so that's one of the ways that I lean into in helping, the BIPOC community or people who haven't heard. And it's a different therapy, so it can feel intimidating. But, Dr. Shapiro has left some beautiful nuggets for us in her story. If we lean into it a bit, that helps us to normalize, right? Some of the stuff we go through, and then it gives us language that we can help our clients identify and validate them. Yeah.
yeah. I think one of the beautiful things is I can understand the phases and the protocols, but I think this is very intelligent. That one of the requirements for basic training to be EMDR trained is that you have to receive a practicum. And I think one of the things that I've used to motivate clients is to say to them, this was my experience in my practicum. And
Hmm.
when I came back to my town, because it wasn't where I live, and I was externally activated by this place that this event happened, I wasn't even realizing my body was activated when I would drive by, and it was clear, right? And so, working in child welfare where we're doing removals and working with families, we see everything in the community. There's locations that just trigger trauma on house removals and those sorts of things.
Hmm.
When I came back and it was like, wow. And it doesn't go away, but it changes the way that my nervous system receives it. So,
Hmm.
how do we take that and impress that on somebody? What I say to them is EMDR is an experience. This is a protocol. This is a modality, and give it a chance because it's an experience. Now, as we're working with communities of color and rural communities, Dr. Norma Day Vines talks about broaching the conversations in your sessions about race, ethnicity, and culture. And Tamera and I have had these conversations. Tamera, as a white female working with you, how does that impact our relationship? And what do we need to know as we build our relationship that's going to strengthen it, or vice versa,
Hmm.
her to I? And that would be the example of a broaching conversation in your therapy session. And that is an important conversation that needs to take place even within the same race, culture, ethnicity. Are there any cultural variables between us? or coming from a rural population, coming into a mental health clinic, what is the experience of your stigma? How can I help comfort you? And having those conversations
Mm-hmm.
as we provide this EMDR therapy. As you come into therapy, what do you think about coming into a therapy, not only therapy, but one that can change the way you see the world? And it's amazing.
It is.
And so I think if we could use her template in those conversations, that's really going to advance the way we see things. You can find her videos on YouTube if you're interested in more about that topic. So that's sort of how, you and I have had those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you experience or receive that as I say that?
Because Kathy, my approach, I go back to some of the fundamentals we get taught in grad school and just ethics of um, how to be a safe counselor, which is unconditional positive regard and just respect for the human being you are helping. And to realize that we are all human, but we are also very different and living different lives and coming from different cultures. And the experiences we have had on this very human journey, that we're not here to challenge any of that, but we're here to hold space to hear the story and to be present in spite of some of these societal messages we often get because we are different. In my view, you know, um, I am very open hearted. And so I believe that we all need each other, first of all. And I say this and I often give this very simple example. I'm like, when you go to the grocery store, you don't get to, the person bagging your groceries may not look like you,
Mm-hmm.
and in that moment, your concern, majority of the time, is can you bag my groceries? Or when your mail is being delivered, you're not concerned about how tall or what shade of skin you just want your mail. And so being able to get to a place for me where I embrace that we are a human uh, tribe, we are collectively just human beings. And yes, we've all been impacted by the stories, the narratives, all those things. But EMDR is such an incredible therapy that, as you were mentioning before, that because when you do this advanced therapy and in the training, you are required, I know I was, to
Yeah.
have your own EMDR experience. And then they continue to tell you to get your own EMDR therapy because we all, Kathy, have been through tough things. And the brain and the body is a very much living organism that is recording. I tell my clients all the time, your body is such a beautiful system and it is serving you in beautiful ways, including recording the things and the stuff you've been through so that it can try to protect you moving forward. And we want to be able to be as healthy as we can be when we're meeting each other and being aware when our bodies, when those stories of pain or bias or whatever it is, when it is triggered, so that we can have authentic connection. And one thing that I appreciate about our relationship is we have entered into this relationship not ignoring
Yeah.
who we see and then playing this game or doing this dance as if,
Yeah.
and to me, that's what builds trust. To me, that's also, we're holding space
And I
and we're
remember
doing
that
it. Yeah.
conversation I had. I said, we had this conversation for our listeners, historically in the Civil War, the North and the South were, in conflict. And I just said, hey, it just came to me one day, hey, Tamir, how does it, being a white person from the North, how do you experience that as a Black person in the South? And, you just said, we're coming together, doing great things, setting a collective example. And even those kinds of things that we never were alive for, right?
Mhm.
Those conversations. I had a conversation with a new EMDR clinician, and she was talking about practicing, in a community that has historically been impacted by the KKK. And so she's thinking about those racial conversations and how do I provide this in this community where all of these conflicts are occurring and they're rural. So in the rural mental health system, how do I become a leader in this EMDR field that has these deep roots of the way therapy is supposed to
Mhm.
be? You come in for your weekly model, talk, and then you go home, and we're transforming that. And as a leader out here in Idaho, my initial thought was, I want to strengthen the EMDR community in Idaho. And what I found was I went nation and international wide before I even could bring it here to Idaho. So I think we can even be surprised as we're talking about these things. I had to get a broader perspective, uh, nationally and internationally before I could even break into the market locally, because some of those conversations and ideologies had just been difficult. And how do we do that ourselves? Who am I to be a leader in the field? Who are we not to? The Marianne Williamson idea of, we are the light. We're not afraid of the darkness. We are the light. And who are we not to embrace our light and to move forward with that? So there is some internal struggle as we're bringing these ideologies back to where we live.
Mhm. I think you said something, Kathy, that was so beautiful, and I know that we are approaching the end of our conversation today. Um, and I just want to anchor us as mental health therapists into what you just said, and it's a gift. Um, that we are here to be light. We are here, and the therapists are here to better lives. In my personal view, you have the medical model, you got doctors, you got chiropractors, you got all these people who are helping to better people's lives the best way they know how, and to help individuals to live healthier so they can live longer. Our role, much like our sister cousins, the psychiatrists and the psychologists and all the things, um, our role is to help heal minds, help
What you
heal
had said a
hearts.
couple of weeks ago
Mhm.
about the universe is calling us after COVID as therapists, that stayed with me. The universe is calling us as therapists.
And we are, in my belief, we are called to be the front line right now. And the world, and I have that conversation. I was so grateful that the door was open for me to speak it because I have been holding that in my spirit
Yeah.
for weeks.
Wow.
And it has now become a mantra and a calling and like a clarion call. And what we're doing here, my beautiful friend, and I just thank you for being so courageous and stepping into such a divine moment with me. We are rising up together to demonstrate, to role model that just because we look different and we've heard different stories and we've been through that it is not true that we cannot create movements and
Yeah.
healing and growth and transformation through trust, love, being human, and we're not in competition. I remember in a conversation you and I had, and we're learning to do this beautiful dance. And you said, we are a great team. And I said, you are so right. And we're dancing together to be a light for other therapists to move beyond what they've been taught, what they've been told, and to listen to their own soul, listen to their own heart, go with their own values, and begin to let's steer the direction of this big ship we call our generation. Let's turn it because together we can do that if we choose to connect so that we really can bring more light, more healing, more growth to families, to individuals, to marriages, oh my God, the vision is beautiful and the horizon is bright.
And I want to say this, and I don't want to harp on it, but this is just, when you develop your EMDR practice and they say, what's your mission and what's your brand? Oh my God, I don't know. Start with what you just said, your why. Start with your why. When people come to say to you, I've had so many conversations, so what do you do for work? Wouldn't it be an interesting conversation is, why do you do the work that you do? That's your brand. And when you embody that, and people will come to you, even if there's dissension or dissatisfaction, if they believe in what you do and why you do it, sometimes the what doesn't matter. And
Ooh,
that's the
yes.
marketing message, right? So I'm
I'm
tying
so
this into
excited.
the whole deal here, girl.
I love it. And I love what we're doing. And it's so strategic. It's so beautiful. It's so divine,
Yeah.
because we are, again, here at Journey Through the Eyes, we're here to have these critical conversations to support therapists who are curious or new and seasoned clinicians on their EMDR journey and in building their private practice. And I can't wait till next week where we get to deliciously move into that why and how we can lean into that why and then cast that why out to community to attract the people we are here to help and to serve. Beautiful, Kathy,
And
beautiful.
I want to just encourage our listeners. We have a email, journeythroughtheeyes@gmail.com. You can message us with any questions that you need, any topics that you are wanting to hear about, because we're open to these things. We are here to be of service to you, and you can find all of that juicy stuff here. So we want to be of service. So we would love to connect with you. We're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We're also on YouTube. So you can find those videos and those podcasts here. But we would love to hear also via email
Mhm.
any conversations you'd like to have us participate in.
Beautiful. And so, Kathy, such a beautiful conversation. We will probably have to come back later on with another part and really leaning into that because it's super loaded. But I'm so excited about where we're headed. Want to encourage our listeners to, again, make sure you click that subscribe button, share this podcast with someone you think that can be encouraged, enlightened, inspired by it. And Kathy, you go ahead on and take us out.
We are Tamera J. Brown and Kathy Couch at Journey Through the Eyes, or EMDR podcast. You can find us at Arise Psychotherapy, PLLC, Kathy Couch, Rewired360.com for consultation and trainings. We have a lot of offerings we're providing spiritually, culturally, and we're transforming the industry. So join us as we rewire how we learn, lead, and thrive. You're so important to us. Thank you for your support. Like and share it with your friends, and we'll see you later.
See you later.